Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our October Wednesday night workshop. I hope that you're enjoying your month and the cool weather, which has been wonderful here in Arizona. Tonight's topic is releasing control. Now, this is a very funny topic because it's not new. Most people understand the idea of control, attempting to release control, or when we need to have control, the necessity for it. I found a great quote by Mark Twain. He says, "Laws control the lesser man, and right conduct controls the greater ones," which I agree with that. The idea of laws and regulations are put for, I don't want to say lesser, that sounds very judgmental, but the idea is people who are not on a spiritual path, not working to exceed or go beyond their limits. To say common man doesn't sound very good either, but that's Mark Twain's words for the lesser man, and then the greater ones are by their own conduct. Eventually we recognize that it's my conduct that I should be in control of and do the right thing, not because the law says it, but because it's what's required from within. So that would be all based on control. When it comes to control, as I mentioned in the announcement, that many people can identify with the desire to control, controlling everything from events, people. We attempt to control people, conversations. The question would be, why do we have the need or feel the need to control? And sometimes it gives us a false sense of security. If I feel like I'm in control of the situation, then I don't feel so anxious. I don't feel stress. I feel like I'm at the control and I'm okay. This is why some people have a difficult time not driving, because when you're driving, you're at the controls. And as a passenger, especially one who's been in several accidents, it's quite difficult to sit in the passenger seat when you can't control the vehicle. Sometimes there's an emotional reaction that happens with it. So there are some reasons why we do control as well. It's not only the sense of security, it's also for perfection. There are times when we want it done right, or we take pride in what we're doing. So we're searching for the perfect way of being or saying the speeches. People who are rewriting speeches constantly are looking for the edge, the perfect way to deliver it. So that would be perfection, which sometimes this drives people away from us. Nobody wants to be around someone who's constantly correcting them. There's managers, if I say that, who are constantly correcting your work. No, this isn't done right. No, this isn't done right. Then we have, of course, naturally the parents who take the items right out of the kids' hands and say, "Let me do it for you. You're not doing it right." That can be a little diminishing. And then, of course, we have the friends who dominate the conversations. They always need to be in control. The ones who always have to have the one-upmanship, the story, "I've done this, I've done that." The name droppers, the ones who always have to have the better story. They need to have all the attention to them. So sometimes our drive for control can be because we're seeking the attention. It gives us validity. It makes us feel important. There's so many books written on control. I don't want to spend the time discussing this, but I do want to discuss the idea that is it possible for us to release control and let things naturally unfold? Torquem Saradarium, the gentleman who was an ageless wisdom teacher, lived in Sedona, passed away recently, within the last few years. He had a list of virtues. Patience he often talked about. And in patience, it's the quality of duration of time that allows for things to unfold naturally. Now, this is difficult for some people, implementing patience. We want it now, especially in today's society. We want it now, instantly, find it quickly. I was watching some videos earlier this week, and it was this one gentleman. He was a comic, and he was talking about the time when you actually had to go to the library and research a topic. Where today, you ask Siri and boom, there you go. You don't even have to do the research to say a couple of words and boom, it shows up for us. So we have a very instantaneous society. And then, how do we let that go? Naturally, we don't want to just shrug our shoulders and let everything go. So there's got to be a median. How do we determine when we assert ourselves and when we simply allow things to unfold naturally? I was thinking about pregnancy. I don't have this written down, but the idea about pregnancy, we can't really control the process that the body goes through to create another body, another human being. However, we can influence it. Prenatal vitamins, exercising, drinking water, taking care of our body actually assists the process of developing another human being, but we're not in there controlling it. Now, I know, people are going to say in vitro, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the natural process a human body goes through to create another human being. So let me pause for a moment while I'm saying this. I in no means am stating that control is bad. There are times when control is necessary and highly appreciated. I would deeply appreciate an airplane pilot being in control of the airplane. Thank you for doing that. For firemen being in control when they run into a fire to rescue individuals. The sergeant who's in charge of the platoon and runs over into war. If someone's in control, that's wonderful. So I'm not saying control is bad. There are times though, or perhaps maybe when they're emotionally fueled, where it can give a negative effect on our lives. And that's what I'd like to talk about for a moment. The idea that where and when do we actually implement control? Now, personal control, this is an easy one. We can think about our physical body. We want to be in control of our physical body. And I'm not talking just about, eating, sleeping, and exercising, which naturally we are in control of that. I'm also alluding to the idea of facial features, the facial expressions that we do, our hand gestures, the tonality that we have. Even controlling our laugh, which my son has told me recently, I laugh too loud. It's ear piercing. So there's things that we actually do have control of on our physical body, even with the health of our body. Eating right, the new craze of whole plant food diets, or the keto diet, or anything else that you've taken on, becoming a vegetarian, a vegan, whatnot. We're in control of the food we're putting in, as well as the sleeping, how much sleep we have. So the maintenance of our body, that's very easy to understand. Anyone's ever been on a diet or an exercise routine, you can comprehend that sometimes there's an element of control that needs to be implemented. Like we have to talk ourselves into getting up and going to the gym. We give ourselves a pep talk. Or we have to talk ourselves out of getting a milkshake, or just this one time eating a donut, or getting a quick the soda's not going to bother me. That we can connect that to willpower, but that is a sense of control where I'm in control of my actions. So that would be the physical. Of course, naturally, this leads us to the next level of us human beings, is the emotional body. Being in control of our emotions sometimes can be a bit difficult. When our emotions are running rampant, we end up getting fiery and energized, and sometimes we talk excitedly or aggressively when our emotions are not under control. This is where EQ comes into play, emotional intelligence. I become aware of how my emotions are interacting and how I'm affecting other individuals, how other individuals are affecting me. So that's the mastery of my emotions. When I'm in control of my emotions, I'm seeking for peace, to make a contribution, to not let outside influences affect my inner state of being. That would be an element of being in control on the emotional level. Most of us are striving for that. Then, of course, we have the mental body. Now, the mental body, this is in control of our thinking. We just say my mind. So when it comes to control of my thinking, there's a thought out there that says, well, I can't control the racing thoughts that happen in my head. Well, we can. That's why meditation is so beneficial for us. When we meditate, truly one of the things we do is controlling our thinking. We're slowing down the thoughts. Dr. Wayne Dyer used to talk about getting into the gap, the space between the words, or essentially the space between the thoughts, where we can connect with creativity, the God within, whatever you want to call it. But he called it getting into the gap. Mantras are also used for this, by repeating the same thing to shut out other ideas that are coming through. We just focus on a word or a phrase. That's what the benefits of meditation would be. So essentially, when it comes to control, we can therefore verify that controlling my physical body has great value, controlling my emotions, again, great value, and controlling my thinking, essential. So we can put that all together. When I have control of myself on all levels, that would be beneficial. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a controlling person. I am indicating that I'm in control of myself. There's a great distinction there. Sometimes this spills over. When I am in control of myself, I have a tendency to want to begin to control other people. And this is what I go into the next topic would be relationships. This is difficult. When it comes to relationships, we have a tendency to want to control them. Our children, for example, that's an easy one. From infancy, we really are in control of our child. We change their diapers, we feed them, put them down, change their clothes. Their actual existence is dependent upon us. Not a problem. That's the way it begins. However, every parent can tell you there's the time when the child begins to demand their own needs and their own desires. We want them to perhaps eat strained peas, and they say, no, I want the applesauce or whatnot. So we understand that. There was a very funny commercial I saw the other day. You know, naturally Halloween's coming up, and they had kids in a sample room. Oh, we've got some healthy veggie candy, and the kids are like spitting it up and I want candy, and it was quite funny. But it's true that children start defining what they want and asserting themselves, starting to begin, and we get the conflict. We want to control them. Anyone who's ever had teenagers understands the idea of every teenager knows they know everything. We forget as parents that we used to be that way. But that's the idea. Then the kids are now facing control because we want to control them and they want to control their own lives. And sometimes it's difficult for parents to let go. I always love to use the illustration of a bicycle. When we teach our kids how to ride a bike, naturally there's training wheels so they can develop their own sense of stability. But once we take those training wheels off, for the very first moments, or maybe perhaps few tries, we're hanging on to the seat. Whether we're running alongside them or holding behind them, but we're hanging on. However, you have to let go. Eventually, you've got to get to the place where you let go of the seat and let your child stabilize themselves in their bike. Now, they might fall, quite true, they might fall, but that's how they develop balance. If you were to hang on to that seat, the child can only go as far as you run. Now, it's not a very small jump to understand the metaphor there. We have to let our kids go and let them have their own experiences. This can be quite difficult for people. Now, I can also mention the idea of relationships in significant others, whether it's your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend. We have a tendency to want to control them. Sometimes we feel we have the right to control them. I've done this. I already have the experience. I know what I'm talking about. Now, there are so many books and seminars and written about this topic. I don't want to go into it. It's too big of a topic to go into. I will simply say that when it comes to relationships, my position is a relationship is like a dance. There are times when I am in control and there's times when he's in control or she. So we have that dynamic. Now, of course, your partner has to be aware that you're in the dance. Communication is so important. If you decide to be in a dance and you want to take control and you haven't indicated that you're taking control, there's going to be conflict. So there has to be an understanding of the dance that we play. And of course, underlying factor is communication. The other type of relationship that we try to control is our parents. Eventually, every child has this experience where we surpass our parents, and it's almost like the parents become the kids. And now, of course, in today's generation, many people are taking in their parents where the parents are coming back to live with them in the golden years. So it's like we have children now that are just older people. So we try to control them. Don't do this, don't do that. And this is difficult too, especially if there's an illness involved and you become a caretaker. The intention of being a caretaker naturally is to take care of the individual. But sometimes we forget that person has desires and needs as well. And we just, here, this is what you're going to get. And we don't include them in some of the decisions. So that's an area where we cross over the control on that. Then, of course, I love the workplace. This is my favorite, where control exists. You know, coworkers trying to control each other, managers controlling their department, supervisors controlling their managers, the CEO and executives, everyone's trying to control each other. Now, in a healthy corporation, this is wonderful. You want to have the CEO be in control, and hopefully they're leading you to a path of profitability and success. The caution is when you have the people who haven't learned how to let go. The helicopter bosses, I love to call them that. They hover and they hover and they hover, and every time they hover it causes stress and frustration and upset. So if you're an employee and you have a helicopter boss, you know, it starts to go, well, how come they don't trust me? Don't they know I know what I'm doing? I have value. And the frustration, communication begins to break down. Tempers are going to start to flare. Eventually, there's going to be a conflict. Not every corporation or business has this, but I've been around enough to know it exists. So in those instances, it's difficult to not get involved. Again, back to my question, how do I know? How much do I insert and how much do I pull back? I wanted to just pause here for a moment because I found this very interesting article about control freaks. Most people, when you think about control, they go to the idea of, oh, a control freak. And when I think about control, I do think about, unfortunately, I do think about the corporate world where the people are in control. Although there has been a change, I must say this, there has been a change where it's more team environments now. But I will go with control freaks. I'm certain there is somebody in your life that will fit along with these lines. So it says 10 signs that you're dealing with a control freak. And this was from thelearningmind.com. They have some great information there. So here's the list. I just wanted to run through this list. So number one, these are 10 signs that you're dealing with a control freak. Number one, they're always correcting people. So control freak is the first one to say, you forgot the comma, you didn't dot the T, that's not the correct word. That's the one. They're always correcting you. You misuse that. You're doing this wrong. When you have the person who's always pointing out other people's mistakes, they're typically the person who will not admit to their own mistakes. They're too busy pointing out everyone else's mistakes. They're invested in being seen as an authority figure. They know they're right, and they have to let everybody else know that they're right. Now, 9 times out of 10, they are right. But again, I like the idea that if I add emotion to this, like correcting someone can be very beneficial, but when you do it with an attitude, you're going to get an attitude back. So that's number one. Number two, they're always criticize and judge other people. So judgmental people are most often not the control freaks because they simply can't put up with the errors or mistakes from other people. They come across as pious and sanctimonious and to their friends and family, but they cannot help themselves. It's like a reflex action. They just instantly correct, instantly criticize, instantly judge. And again, I would say that goes back to the lines where putting the reflection away from them and drawing the attention to others. So maybe nobody will see the flaws within themselves. Number three, they are leaders, not team players. And this is true. A lot of control freaks are leaders, and they cannot play on a team. If you've ever played softball, I used to play softball. If you ever played softball with a controlled freak, it's really takes away the fun of the game. Go stand here, go do that. No, don't do this. You're swinging incorrectly. I mean, there's here's the batting. Now, obviously, the team captain naturally has to be in charge of the batting order and what positions are being played. But when they constantly are correcting you on where to stand, how your uniform should look, what your shirt looks like, where your hat is, that can be, again, it takes away the fun of the sport. So everyone understands that when you're working or playing with the control freak, they're not good team players. And this is why in interviews, a lot of people will ask about whether or not you play team sports. That's a good indication of whether or not you can play a sport with a team, or are you the soloist individual. Number 4, they take full credit for their success. Full credit. Doesn't matter how many people have assisted them, doesn't matter how many people have done the research, they're the ones who did it. So they take full credit. I'm the one, and they're responsible for their success. Doesn't matter that they've had mentors or people who have guided them. Nope, them and them alone. They're the only ones who've made it happen for themselves. Number 5, they will never admit when they're wrong. A control freak does not admit that they are wrong. They will find a way to deflect it. And if they are wrong, they'll just do something, oh, well, okay, that doesn't matter, and change the subject, which some of you have ever had that experience. It's very funny. Anybody, I mean, even if there's incredible evidence coming towards them, they still won't admit they're wrong. They'll just say, oh, well, let's just fix it. Like, they will never admit that they made a mistake. It's very funny. Number 6, they know what's best for you and try to change you. Well, this is what you need to do constantly. Here's what you need to do. They're editing, correcting, and adjusting the things that they think is best for you. Now, again, sometimes this can be beneficial. As a parent, we kind of know what's best for our kids, so we do try to jump in there, but then we have to do hands off. You know what? Okay. But it's a natural inclination to fall in. I've done this already. I know what to do. Let me tell you how to do it. Yeah, a good rule of thumb here is wait for someone to ask for advice. If they don't ask, let them go. That is one beneficial thing that can happen. Number 7, they spend a lot of their time trying to prevent bad things from occurring. Again, not a very bad thing. We don't mind if things that happen. We don't want bad things to occur. So control freaks worry about the future, and as such try to make sure that they are prepared for anything bad that's coming their way. Much of their time, however, is wasted on concentrating on events that might not occur. So they might actually exaggerate and get so lost. The quickest one I could think of is the Y2K phenomenon 18 years ago. The world is going to fall apart because we're turning over and the computers aren't going to be able to handle it. Planes are going to fall from the sky. There was a lot of dramatization and exaggeration there. That would be the control freaks. Now, a little bit of that, absolutely, be prepared naturally, but not to the extent that's all you're thinking about. Here's another one, number 8, they never delegate tasks. Of course, naturally, a control freak, and I have had this experience in my business so often, I can't even tell you. The phrase they say is, well, if I want to get it done right, I have to do it myself. Yes and no. You train someone to do it the way that you would like to do it. You pass on your knowledge to individuals, but a control freak cannot do it. They believe they are the only one who knows what to do, and here's how you do it. So delegation is not a part of their language. Number 9, they always have to have the last word. That's a control freak. The last word, even if it's just saying good night, I love you. It's like they have to have the last word. But in an argument, they typically are the ones who have to say the last word, and they are, I told you so. Vernacular comes out. And number 10, they don't have time for people who make mistakes. So, if you're a person who says, hey, everybody makes a mistake, a control freak doesn't want to hear it. Your first mistake, you're done. Can't trust that person anymore, and that's why they don't delegate. Now, I know this list is a bit comical. I think it's kind of comical, and yet there are attributes that I've seen and experienced. So in these instances, I would say that's what happens when you take control to the extreme, which is why we use the title control freak, which I'm not comfortable using the word freak, but that's the phrase, the control freak. We could also say when somebody's out of control. They're just as violent and detrimental. When you have a person who's out of control emotionally, especially mentally, when someone is out of control, and physically people can be out of control as well, they cause harm. So when we take control to the extreme, we naturally are causing harm, not only just to ourselves, but the people around us. So then this brings me back, I'd like to return back to my question of how do we determine when we inject ourselves, or when do we just pull back and allow things to unfold naturally? A good rule of thumb that George spoke to us about was the idea that when it comes to control, recognizing I'm the only one I can control. I have the illusion that I'm controlling other people, but I'm not. I truly am not. If you think about the 12-step program, they have the phrase that says, let go, let God. And that's the idea of letting control. I can't control everything. I have to let a higher being, a higher power take control. Anybody who prays, meditates, does visualizations, sometimes that's what we do to alleviate stress. We release the control, put it in a balloon and let it go on. Set it our way so that we're not worried so much, stressful so much, anxious so much, because these are some underlying factors of why we try to control things. So in the 12-step program, there's actually the Serenity Prayer, which was written by, I have it written down now, Reinhold Niebuhr. In 1934 is when he began to use it in a sermon in one of the churches that he had out of Massachusetts. And most people understand or know the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's the key. That's exactly what we have to know. When do I know? How do I know? Do I step in and I pull back? That's wisdom. Well, the answer right there is, can I change it? If I cannot change it, step back and let go. If I can change it, then I assert myself. However, the idea is I cannot control and change anyone else's life. This all has to do with me. I insert myself for my own actions. I'm not going to step in and control my husband's outcome because I think I know what's best for him. My children's outcome because I know what's best for them. This is all about me. If there's a situation that's occurring, how do I show up in the situation? How do I respond to the situation? I think about Mother Nature. I mean, we just had the Hurricane Michael, and you know, the videos that I've been seeing are just devastation. I'm actually surprised it's not more in the media, but it's absolute devastation that's out there. And we can't control that. As much as we'd like to control the weather, we can't. We can't control hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, volcanoes, earthquakes. We cannot control them. But we can control the way we respond to them. Absolutely 100%. We are in control of our responses. When I think about nature, I think about rivers too. And you know, if you've ever had the image, picture this. Standing in a river waist deep where there's a strong current, turning against the current and try to push the water in the opposite direction. Now I know that sounds idiotic. It's not going to happen. Eventually you're going to get tired. But metaphorically, that's what we do. When we try to control things that are beyond our control, it's just as hysterical as standing there pushing the river, making the water go the other way. No progress at all. But we can adapt to the river. You know, if you've ever been in a kayak or a boat, there's the rudder. And the rudder helps us guide our direction. It helps us use what's unfolding to take us where we want to go. I think that's probably the greatest element of control that I can think of. If I had a rudder, how do I steer my life? So I know I'm not really answering the question, but I am. You're the one who would know how much control is needed. And when you're controlling, is it infringing on someone else's experience? So observe and adjust, observe and adjust, observe and adjust. Like a conductor, we observe and adjust our behavior. We adjust our control or lack thereof control. In conclusion, I'd like to end up with one of my favorite passages from Ella Wheeler Wilcox. She was a great poet. The poet says, "One ship drives east, another drives west, by the same self winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sail, and not the gale, which decides which way they go. Like the waves of the sea are the waves of fate as we voyage along through life. 'Tis the set of our soul and not the goal. Excuse me. 'Tis the set of the soul which decides our goal. 'Tis the set of the soul which decides our goal, not the calm or the strife. So it's how I interact with life that's going to obviously get me to my goal. So thank you for joining me this Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks for our Monday night workshop in November. Have a wonderful rest of October. Enjoy your Halloween. Bye now.